Alright, time for another debate physics video presentation. That's barely starting. Okay, there it goes. Took a while, so who knows? Hopefully, no whatever problems, but we'll see. Not a great start, so. But, it's life. Yeah. It doesn't start well, it doesn't really go all that well, blah, 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 blah. It all ends up being kind of a tragic, sad story. Could be worse, and that's the fact. And the people making it worse are these, you know, these truth fuckers, people who just couldn't care less about science and the truth and facts. So we'll play two videos, one by this Ian Gosling. He's just become a disgusting character. I mean, there's just no excuse for the slander that's in his video, frankly. Just no excuse for making a video this. It's just so illogical and nonsensical. Alright, and then there's this bar kook who just keeps pretending he has some contribution to make. And it's just absolute shit. He's so stupid. He doesn't know anything about engineering, science, anything. He's obviously had some trouble, getting through his life, and he just, he's been too distracted to have done any thinking about how you engineer something. So he's done this idiotic, I'm going to bang my plastic heart into a piece of stick and do an experiment, and it's just a piece of crap for lots of reasons. And frankly, you could just go with the images he provides of his data. And you can't really follow along exactly what he's reading, but apparently, I mean, he's proving the other liar, okay, frankly, wrong, in the sense that he is demonstrating that it doesn't take 4 times the energy to compress a spring twice as much. But whatever. But these images are just it's disgracefully bad. That he could think he can get away with that. So let's just play the image part. Comparing all the spring compression. So instead of just using his time gate for the purpose it should be used for timing things, I don't even know why they bother timing him if he's going to worry about how much the spring compresses in the images. But you can just look at these images. I mean, they're not the same resolution image. Look at the size of this one's length and this one's length, and so their images are getting more and more compressed, and of different resolution. And even in the same group of images, these images aren't all the same size. They've all been cropped or something to turn them into shit. I mean, obviously this spring is less high than this one right above it. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. How can you compare these distances? How much the spring compresses based on image data where the resolution is different in the images. It makes no sense at all. How do you think you're going to fool me with that? And then he's again too stupid to understand what you're supposed to be measuring is the coil separation, the separation between the coils of the spring. So, you have to explain all this stuff to these fucking morons because they don't pay any attention to the details. The real physics has details. Where is... No, I won't bother asking. No point in asking why that doesn't work. Yeah, no point doing it. I knew that wasn't the right one. This is the one, and it doesn't move. Isn't that bizarre? Alright, well, I'll just try getting rid of it. Well, at least that works. I'm just so sick of this shit from these people. They just keep, let's do a bunch of amateur, really bad experiments, and that'll be good physics. No, that's really shitty physics. Alright, so Hooke's law basically says something about a spring, okay? And this is pretty standard stuff, and we all know, okay, from the function of scales, that they actually work. Okay, that you can just have a spring inside a device, and all you have to do is put twice the weight on, and the spring will compress twice as much. I mean, this is all based on Hooke's law, and it couldn't get right answers, and it does get right answers. You put a half mass on, it weighs half as much, and full mass twice as much. So it works. It's reliable. But, you know, it has to be calibrated, and the real thing they're calibrating is this coil, is what you're really talking about. So if the spring has, so what the real distance that you're measuring is the distance of the coils. If you have something where they rolled a couple of pieces of metal together at the ends to, you know, create a flat surface, that distance doesn't count. You can't add this distance, because that's not what you're measuring. You're measuring this difference. So if you add that in, you'll get incorrect answers, because that ruins, okay, the differential between the compressions, because you're comparing this that doesn't move, okay, and that's going to screw up what you're looking for, which is the compression of the coils themselves. So twice the compression won't look like twice the compression, because you have these end coils on the spring. So it's just a fact. That's how it works. Okay, so those are little things you have to think about and consider when you're doing the experiment. Okay, you have to look at all these little details, and you have to be aware of the details. But they couldn't care less. And again, the idea of having these different resolution images just makes you say right on its face, what are you, you're going to just cheat right in front of my face? I mean, you know, what the fuck? How can I have any assurance that, look, I mean, this looks like a much closer image than this image. You know, so yeah, it looks bigger than this one, but I think if I really looked at the coil's compression, you know, how much distance there is between the coils, they're probably the same. And this is the one where, you know, by their theory, I don't know what they would say, it's 1.4 the compression or something, I don't know. Obviously it should be the same by Hooke's law, is that you basically have created the same mass, because you have the same weight, but you have the same momentum. Okay, 1 times 1, 2 times a half, same. And then this one should be 1/2 of these. Now, obviously, this looks like 1/2 of this first image, right? So, oh, can you see that? Probably not. Yeah, good thing I now and then remember. I don't know why I can't resize that fucking thing. Damn it. Alright, well, it's always something's broken. Yeah, it's broken, so you're stuck with the smaller image. But anyway, you can see here, okay, that this is a more zoomed in image, and obviously this is probably close to half of this. Who knows? But I'm just saying, it's Hooke's law. Okay, springs do work. Now he showed he had put a timing gate on and showed the reflexive speeds, and they appear to be. The spring is losing twice the energy. I mean, I don't know, but so it's not a very good spring, because it's apparently going in with, you know, but it's hard to tell from what he was exactly reading. It did appear that the 2 mass did go at the, you know, the velocity for the double mass was half the velocity for the 1 mass. But again, this is, you know, these images are garbage. So whatever. So again, this is his little plastic car. He's putting batteries in it, I guess. I don't know. Then they move around, which again is, you know, from Brozo. He should have learned he's not supposed to do that. And he's banging some piece of wood that he's holding down each time. You know. So I'm not saying the wood's moving. It's just that it's really just not, you know. So these springs does this you can see this spring does wrap into a double coil at the end, and so it probably has a double coil at this other end. I don't know if that looks like a, well, no, it's not a free end, that's a defect in the tire. So again, you have to account for that fact that it has a little extra on the spring. and that will change the measurement. But again, he doesn't have a high-speed camera, and he's presuming he can take these pictures of these events. So let's just play the end of this. You know, that he has to get the picture of exactly the smallest frame, when who knows if he has a frame rate even possible of capturing the smallest. The frame with the smallest compression is actually the smallest compression. So these are these images, and I think he throws something else on the end. I just saw this and I said, oh fuck, this is too silly. So, but I think there's another silly image coming. Yeah, here we go. Alright. And so he's saying spring in rest position. Okay, so you know, the coil size is the important part, frankly, this distance here. So he doesn't have that distance marked, but that would be the key difference. And again, the resolution of these photos, frankly, I'm not going to bother measuring them, but I don't have too much confidence he's got it right. Alright, so he says 2 mass going 1 velocity. So this is the heavy one going 1 velocity. This is the light one going 2 velocities. So this should be twice the compression. That's what Hooke's law would... No, they would be the same, sorry. 1 times 2 or 2 times 1, same weight. So he's claiming that they have different weights. So even though we know gravity does the 4-to-1 thing, even though we know that's how it weighs, he's claiming he's going to prove that doesn't work. Okay, go ahead. Knock yourself out. Alright, and so then this is the 2 mass going twice the velocity, which would be twice as much momentum. So it's twice the momentum. 2 times 2 is 4. This is 1 times 2 is 2. Okay, yeah, so this would be twice the compression. So it certainly is twice the compression, the 2 mass going 1 velocity, the 2 mass going 2 velocity. So you could argue that it's close if you take out the end bits. That the 2 mass going 1 velocity is producing twice the compression. The 2 mass going 2 velocities. So doubling the velocity, we got twice the compression. Pretty close. If you take out this, you know, the first coil compression, the double here, and I think you have a double here too, it appears. So, you know, but this is what he's, okay, so we have not a great spring, okay, in terms of we only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 usable coils. And we have to rely on his photographs, and obviously in the previous slide we saw how his photographs aren't worth much, in the sense of he hasn't got the same resolution in the photographs. So, but let's go back to that slide again. So this is what they call good science. So he's debunking Hooke's law, okay, in one case, and completely confirming it almost in the other case. I mean, if you look at the coil difference here, that's clearly half of the coil difference here. So you could argue that, yeah, you got your 2-to-1 relationship here pretty much iced. And the aberrant one is the 1 mass going twice the velocity. And that just happens to be the one that obviously is all fuzzy, meaning he couldn't get that frame exactly perfect. Too much motion in it, you know. So you know, obviously these frames suck at the higher speed. So the higher velocity is clearly a lot harder to photograph. So anyway, so this is what science should be. Science should be this crappy amateur crap, you know, this shitty, stupid, cruddy junk experiments, and they should use this fudge, and then they should fart about how it's the actual truth. And it's just, I mean, it's the definition of not doing the scientific thing, the being careful thing, the being sure you're getting to the right that you're measuring the right thing and you're measuring it with the right approach, that you're likely to tease a truth out of the experiment. And it seems unlikely here. It seems this spring coils, it does seem that it coils one coil at a time rather than all the coils compressing. See, these compressed, but the two end ones obviously stuck to that end coil. I'm just saying the theory, of course, is built on the idea of a spring that doesn't have impact coils on the sides, bumpers. It's a spring that's just made out of coils, no compressed ends. That's what the law is based on. That's the technical physics that's being measured. All right. But no, that escapes his understanding. Now we'll see if there's any. Let's see, we'll refresh it and see what kind of comments there are, if any, on this piece of shit. Another piece of shit. Alright, so no comments yet. 6 views. Not too many views yet either. Alright. So yeah, I just saw that one this morning. So we'll go to this Ryan Gosling video, which is just disgracefully stupid. Alright, in terms of the accusations it's making about what I suggested or said, how physics works. Just such lies. I mean, the fact that they have to do this desperate lying crap should just be a huge giveaway. They just, why would you lie? If you have physics on your side, why do you have to lie about what somebody else suggests or says or any of that? Why? I mean, you really shouldn't have to. Alright, so I made this simple point that if the faster you go across a scale that's going to measure your weight, that the less you're going to weigh. So if you could roll on a roadway and we cut a little section out, okay, and you were to travel across the path and this little section was going to weigh you, that the faster you traveled across this section, the less the spring would record as your weight. Now obviously there's a point where you weigh 100 pounds and it's going to read your 100 pounds, right? But the faster you can go, the less it will read if you can get within that 9.8 meters per second. So if you can go a little faster than the 9.8 meters per second kind of speed, then you'll start reducing this weight. Okay, and the faster and faster you go, and theoretically you get to a point where you have so little contact with the scale surface that there's no way you could impart any weight on it because you don't have enough contact with it. And it all has to do with 9.8 meters per second. Okay, that's how the force happens per second in a time dependent way. It's not, it has to be a second. It can be a tenth of a second. It can be a millionth of a second. Okay, and it always does the same proportion. You just change where the 9 is, right? So you can go per a millisecond. So 0.0009.8 meters per millisecond. Okay, same force. It doesn't matter what this denomination is. This can be hours, it can be years, and it can be millions or billions of a second. And the same truth exists about how much force can push you down. And so the truth is as I cut the time slower, into smaller and smaller increments, so the amount of time I'm on the scale goes down, okay, then my weight goes down. Just a fact. Alright, so that's what I argued. Okay, so you have a car and you just, zoom it across a road that has a scale in it. The faster it goes across the scale, the less it'll end up weighing. Now, obviously, like I said, if it's going below 10 miles an hour or something, it's still going to weigh the weight of the car. So you have to be going faster than the force pushing you in. But other than that, not complicated. So faster than 20 miles an hour, you will see this effect. The car could be 2 tons, And the fact is, it'll start weighing 1.5 tons, and then 1 ton, and then 500 pounds, and all the way down the faster I go. And again, I made this argument in the context of Galilean physics, which demonstrates pretty decisively this relationship 1, 3, 5, 7 about how you gain your velocity. So if you were to drop just 2 seconds, you would, in the first unit of time, you would gain 1/2 of your final velocity. So if your final velocity was 10, you gained 5 of it here, and then you gained in this 3 distance, which I should have made 3 units of distance. I should have made it bigger so you could see. This is 3 units of distance, right? Let's just do it. All right. This is 1, and then the next unit of distance will be this. Both these events happen in the same amount of time. You gain 1/2 of your speed here, and you only gain another 1/2 here. So this whole giant distance only gets you another 9.8. So you got 9.8 here, you get 9.8 here. That's 2 9.8s. You end up with 19.6 as an impact velocity, which is twice the 1 unit of distance, obviously. So you now have twice the velocity, and the fact is you will weigh, in spite of what dispar means to tell you, you will weigh twice as much. So even though you fell 4 times the distance, your impact weight will only be twice as much, because you're only going twice the speed, and you only encountered 2 units of force, because it's only 2 units of time. That's the argument being made, so he totally evades this subject. 9.8 meters per second. Ignores that statement again, okay, continually, and you'll see what he does. Well, what he basically does, he takes my scale and then puts it on a conveyor belt and says, there, it's the same experiment. So the object's just sitting on the scale, right? It's not moving across the scale. It's just sitting on the spring, and he puts a conveyor belt underneath the fucking goddamn scale and says, there, see, it doesn't work. I mean, it's so bad, you're just like, I mean, how outrageous are your lies and your misparaphrases going to get? And we'll see if in the comments section anybody calls him out on it. I mean, it's such an egregious trespass against the truth. It's such a fucking rape of what I actually suggested, what I actually said, and what I said in this context of defending Galileo, 500-year-old, well-established, proven physics that he says isn't the truth. God, so that's as far as I played it, because it's just such a steaming pile of shit. Alright, so we'll put that back up, even though I can't change its size, so we're stuck, or its position. I guess I frankly ought to just get rid of that window, because I can't do anything there. Alright, we're probably going to turn the volume up. But I mean, what a despicable, scummy liar.
Somebody on the internet was asserting that with his little scale...
Yes, I use this as an example of any scale on Earth and how it functions. And the fact is it measures momentum. I can turn the scale this way, and I can take a mass, and I can move it 9.8 meters per second, and it will weigh its weight. It'll weigh the same this way as it'll weigh this way. And all I have to give it is 9.8 meters per second of velocity. And it'll weigh what it weighs in gravity. I can duplicate the contact event, okay, and basically prove that, yes, twice the velocity, twice the compression.
And a marker pen, and he was demonstrating.
Yes, I drew 9.8 meters per second, and I put a box around it, and I emphasized it and pointed it out, and then I pointed out what Galileo's rules are.
In that if the pen is static on the scale, it'll weigh an amount. like this anvil does here. And as you move the pen across the scale slightly...
Yes, as you move the pen across the scale, as you change the amount of contact the pen has with the scale. That's what I said. You fucking pathetic liar. Oh, man.
faster.
So that's like moving the anvil across the scale. Yes, if I move the anvil across the scale and I move it faster and faster across the scale, the anvil will begin not to weigh the same.
It'll weigh a slightly less amount.
No, it'll could weigh a lot less.
And if you carry on moving the pen, sliding it over the scale faster and faster, it'll weigh less and less. Until...
Yes, and these are all absolute facts, okay? You're not going to debunk them with your anvil and your scale. These are absolute truths of reality. That's the way the physical universe works, because gravity is a time-dependent force. And if I can move through it faster when it's being measured, the gravity's only being measured the time I'm on the scale, and the faster I go through the distance of that scale's reading mechanism, the faster I go across this distance, there's the same 9.8 meters of possible gravity to collect right here. This section of gravity I can collect. The faster I go through that field of gravity, the less I can push the scale down. Those are absolute physical facts. And you're a preposterous asshole to sit there and throw your flat earth experiment in the middle of this conversation. You're just proving you have absolutely no interest in the fucking truth. None whatsoever. You're a petty, smelly anused butthole shitbrit who is just fucking with the goddamn truth because you don't like somebody. You're puking on science, okay? Because you can't, you want to get it back at somebody, and you're using science to do it, and you're breaking it and slandering it and fucking it because you just don't give a goddamn about the truth. You're just a fucking disgusting, petty, warped-brained goddamn troll.
If you move it really quick, he says, it'll weigh 0, and that's an absolute fact, he says.
Yeah, and it is.
Well, I thought, I'm going to try this because this is astounding. Let's try.
There's nothing astounding. Newton did the experiment. Shoot the cannonball, and if you shoot the cannonball fast enough, it goes into orbit. And you shoot it even faster, and it just leaves the Earth altogether. Yeah, that's how it works, fuck for brain. Make your spaceship go fast enough and it'll go to Mars.
Right. So that's about...
So he says that's amazing theory. That's an amazing theory. What, you could fly to the moon if you go fast enough? Ooh, who could believe that?
£2.
So look what he's doing. He's moving a conveyor belt with the scale underneath it and saying, see? Same experiment. What? How ridiculous can this moron be? Oh, somehow the scale's going to read different because you're moving the ground under the scale. I mean, it's that moronic. Somehow the scale knows you're wasting time moving a frickin' conveyor belt underneath it? No. Who would think the weight changes of something based on the fact that you're dragging something underneath the scale? How could being under the scale have anything to do with what the spring is experiencing, which is a constant weight placed on top of it? Absolutely nothing to do with the experiment I diagrammed, with the context of Newton and Galileo included. And you're just slandering. This is just such fucking petty slander.
That's minimum speed. I'm speeding up now. That's about twice the speed.
So just understand this little group of scumbags, okay? Let's see if Piro or any of these other shit talkers show up to say, Ian, you went a little too far here. I mean, you're just showing no respect for any of the scientific arguments. You're showing no respect for the scientific method to sit there and say this is the same experiment in any way. It has absolutely no comparison to what he diagrammed or what he talked about. You're just being a pathetic liar, and you're doing it for our cause, which makes us all look like a group of pathetic liars. Let's see if any of them call him out. I mean, how low can they go? I mean, if they're going to, this is okay. To do this is okay with these assholes. I argue to all the ones who are playing along. You know, all the ones who think you have any integrity or that you're an honest player in any of this. I defy you, okay, to sit there and defend this nonsense as having anything to do with the argument I made.
It hasn't moved yet, is it? I'm hoping it's going to go down in weight. Just keep going. It should be weighing a lot less, according to this theory.
So, you heard him. It should be weighing less according to my theory. I didn't say anything about this stupid experiment. This has nothing to do with what I argued. Obviously, this anvil is not spending less time on the spring. I mean, it's just an idiotic fucking video.
Well, it's got to top speed. Should weigh nothing. It's an absolute fact. Weight less and less the faster you move it. Absolute fact.
So, right. So, show me a flat Earth experiment that's worse than this. I mean, there's no, right, or a free energy experiment that's worse than this. This is the worst I've ever seen in terms of a insane, okay, perversion of a concept.
Frictionless travel.
So obviously the scale didn't travel anywhere. So I mean, obviously you didn't push the scale anyway. But even if you did, where in my argument did I ever imply that pushing the scale with the weight on top of it, pushing them both together, means the spring is going to feel less compression? I mean, it's clearly nowhere even close to my argument. I mean, it's just so distant and such a perversion. It's just obviously this is just a form of cruddy little petty hate speech or something. I mean, this is just you can't, it's hard to imagine a worst case. I mean, how could you go a step further than this in lying about my position and what I'm arguing? I mean, how could you make a bigger lie video than this?
I hope you enjoyed that.
So that's it. So, I mean, there's a point where I am really entitled not to have to pay attention to this asshole anymore, right? I mean, he couldn't care anything about the truth here. So he says, I wanted to test this astounding new theory from draft science. So he thinks it's an astounding theory that this scale will read less weight the faster I move the weight across it. So the faster, the less time the weight spends on the scale, the less the thing's going to weigh. He thinks that's astounding theory. Yeah. Do you think he thinks that is... Do you really think he's that stupid? I mean, maybe he is that stupid, but I mean, isn't that an amazingly stupid thing to think? All right. A theory from the draft science think tank that weight measured on a scale will reduce with velocity. Yes, how much you're bent by gravity reduces by how fast you go through the gravity. Yes, I drew that too, over and over again. You know, where I drew the little planet and I said, here's your little line of distance, and the faster you go through the distance, the less you'll be bent towards the gravitational body because you're in the gravity less time. And the same is true going this way in gravity. So you're just turning the experiment this way. Now the gravity's going this way. Okay, and the truth is you're bent more the slower you go. And the faster you go, the less you're bent. I mean, it's so elemental. Like, 10-year-olds could get this without a problem. I mean, just, oh yeah, we're just going to take this experiment this way, and we're just going to move it this way. Yeah, get it? Same rules apply. Oh, amazing. Ugh, the scum on this planet. Frightening. How low will they go? Okay, let's see what he says. Great work here, mate. So he thinks this actually is a response to something I said. So Michael Falwell has outed himself as despicable liar. I mean, you can't possibly think this is great work at, isolating a fact and then showing how the fact isn't true. Come on. You're just so incredulous here. You're just showing you have no credibility. There's nothing about you that could be taken at all seriously if you can't just sit there and say, oh, God, what a silly goddamn experiment that was. I'm not generally shocked that it didn't become lighter. I am. So he says, I'm. Okay, I'm generally shocked that it didn't become lighter. So again, he thinks this is what I actually argued. That moving the whole scale, if you push the whole scale, the scale and the thing on it will change weight. No, I never suggested that if you put the scale in a cart and you move the cart with the weight on it, that somehow it gets lighter. No, that wasn't in my video ever. So just lie. Pathetic liars. Alright. If his complete codswallow was true, scientific theory. So if it were true that things in gravity less time are affected less by the gravity, which is just an absolute fact. I mean, NASA does know that one. If you went really fast, objects would just begin to float up in the air. Exactly what they actually will do. So if you go fast, see, the Earth is round, moron. I'll clue you in. The Earth is round, moron. And if I actually do go fast enough, yeah, I go right off the ground, you stupid fuck. Oh, God. This is so stupid. You don't float up into the air, you fly up into the air. I suspect that's how aeroplanes work, because they go really fast on the runway and float into the sky. Well, it is pretty much how it works. You point the thing and you give it momentum, and that defeats the gravity. Shit. God, what a moron. You got me laughing out loud for real. Okay. So Brozo, again, obviously doesn't take the science at all seriously. This isn't what I argued. This is their standards. So just recognize that this is the big grain of poo salt you have to take everything they say with, because clearly they just don't care how low they will go. How much they will cheat the argument, there's no bounds to it. Did he really say that? Now, Brozo pretending he hasn't heard me talk about gravity. Okay, I've heard some nonsense in my time, but that guy takes the biscuit. So he apparently hasn't even heard what my arguments are, and yet he knows that this lying sack of shit has in some way accurately portrayed the circumstance. And so let's see, he's going to have a conversation with him saying what? I can't imagine what his response is going to be. Yeah, I'm glad I fooled you, Stephen. Yeah, I'm glad about that. Nice to hear from you. Yeah, hilarious. Sorry, I'm so busy on an entirely different kind of project. Yeah, whatever. Cleaning up welfare horde diarrhea. More fun. TBH. Well, sometimes. I don't know. But I don't know. I'm still curious about the big pile of money he fell into. So is that his project, figuring how to spend his money? By the way, I thought when objects move faster, they would weigh less, but also weigh more. I don't know. So that right there already Ooh. Your Asperger's is showing. More looking from the opposite direction. What's the opposite direction? Thus, according to the average weight appearing to be the same. I thought this was a fact because I thought of it just now. I don't even know how that could be a reasonable statement. I thought when objects move faster, they would weigh less, but also weigh more. Woot-toe. Okay, so that's Farley. I haven't watched all the draft videos, so I can't say for sure, but from what I understand, he believes that fast cars move like a boat skipping across the water. No, I believe that gravity is a time-dependent force, and if you move through the gravity fast, then it has less time to give you momentum, and you'll move less in the direction that the gravity is pushing. It's 9.8 meters per second. Also, cars in Hollywood chase scenes spend a lot of time in the air. Yeah, well, obviously some things in Hollywood aren't true, like buses going across gaps in highways. That doesn't happen. I know enough about mechanics to critique either way, but just clarifying his statement. So clearly you didn't clarify my statement. My statement is if I run across a scale fast and only spend a shorter and shorter amount of time on the scale, I can't possibly do anything but weigh less. I can't weigh more. Oh, God damn it. So, and then the John Walker says, yes, I've enjoyed the video. Thanks a lot, Ian. So they all just chime in on a video that, again, can't be much worse, right? I mean, can somebody show me a video where somebody contrives a video more obviously that's irrational, doesn't contain any of the actual physics in the argument? Can they somebody show me a video by somebody attempting to distort and cheat that's any more egregious than this? Yeah, no, I don't think they could. I don't think you can. You can't get lower than this piece of steaming shit. It's going to win the I'm a preposterous liar award. I lie about science on the internet. That's my job, is to lie about what people say and then make silly, idiotic comparisons and say this is what they said when they didn't say anything like that. So disgusting behavior, frankly, but it's, you know, we know what the character of these people is. Okay? These are people who thinks it's okay to post images of my sisters or something as a counter argument against me. They can't do better than that. These cheap, petty morons. All right. So, yeah, that's probably enough, right? I mean, that was just, oof. So I think there was a couple of videos I could play because the chatters will be useless as usual, and so I can't depend on them. Yes, none available yet. All right. So let's see. Not him. Oh yeah, he does say some stuff here, right here in the beginning. That's really, kind of dopey. So I figure, well, let's play a little Wolfram. Alright, let's see if you can see that. Yes, you can. Alright, probably have to adjust the volumes because the Gosling guy can't figure out how to get reasonable amount of volume in his videos. Alright.
You can put things here or there sort of in the universe. And the traditional view.
Okay, so the traditional, so I think you probably need a little more. I need a little more volume, so up that.
View that up until about 100 and something years ago, people sort of imagined that space was just this completely background thing that had no character of its own. It was just...
Yeah, it's just kind of funny, right? And it was really easy to do, and apparently nobody can do that anymore. So apparently now space has to be frosting or something. It has to be made out of something. Space just can't be, oh yeah, that's that empty stuff, in between stuff. there's stuff, and then there's places where there's unstuff, where there ain't no stuff. And that's completely incomprehensible to people now. It just is kind of funny. I find that. Oh, you got to be kidding me. It's a hard concept to get your brains around. Space is nothing. Oh, gee, that's impossible to imagine.
Just you put things here, you put things there, and
Exactly.
it was just something where you could do geometry
Exactly.
in space, and space was just this pure
Yes.
static background.
Yes.
Then, with Einstein's general theory of relativity that came out,
yes, then everything goes to shit. And Einstein, suggests a big pile of woo space, and then later he complains about woo quantum. So he commits the crime of injecting a bunch of woo into science, and then complains about woo in science. Ironic. All right, so we can play a little tiny bit more, maybe.
1915, there was kind of the idea that it was that one should think about space as having some potential structure. For example,
Yes, having properties. Ooh, it's bendable. It's flexomatic. Yeah.
being curved. For example, that a massive object could curve space.
And it would only curve it if everything was understood to be round, which, again, they didn't prove that yet either. Fuck. Let's see what kind of moron says something here. Despard should have used lower velocities so his camera could capture it without blur. But then he needs more spring, frankly. It's way too stiff a spring because he's not going to be able to see the amount of compression. Isn't going to be substantial enough to get a good picture of it.
And that was a way of accounting for the presence of gravity. And
so it really doesn't account for anything. It just creates a fake free energy source. Okay, so it takes gravity out of the energy realm of the universe. Now it doesn't need any physical cause besides some bent geodesic thing, some bent effect. Okay, so instead of isolating the cause of gravity, he just isolated the effect in a new way. And he just claimed the effect is by some new condition created by some new mechanism that compresses and expands space. So instead of coming up with an excuse for why something's being pushed or pulled, and a mechanism for pushing and pulling, he just invents this bullshit that space changes its dimensions.
so that was sort of a place where it started to look like there was something about space that wasn't just this pure background static thing. It was something where there was some level of kind of character to space, where it wasn't like every piece of space everywhere in the universe is the same. There could be a piece of space that was curved as a result of the presence of mass that...
Bent, there's no point in saying curved, okay? Because curves really don't work in 3 dimensions. It's compressed space. In 3 dimensions, you really have to talk about compression. You have to talk about an anti-divergence, as Susskind would say. You have to talk about how there's more stuff in a smaller amount of space, because that's what it has to do in 3 dimensions.
And that curvature would lead to the force of gravity.
That convergence, it's a convergence, okay? Even though he says anti-divergence, it's a convergence of space into a singularity, the infinitesimally small, non-existent nothing thingy with no spatial dimensions.
And so on. And roughly why that happens is, normally, if you say, and this is something that was kind of thought about from the time of Newton in the late 1600s, this Newton's first law that if you just start something going in some direction and you don't operate on it with any force, you just let it go, then it will go in a straight line. And that was...
If it has collected an imbalance in its force, the imbalance stays until it is rebalanced by some counter force or made worse. So yes, everything gets a condition, a balance, an internal condition, and until something comes to change that condition, it's stuck with that condition.
By the way, at the time in Newton's time, that was not a trivial hypothesis to make, because in Newton's time, one didn't have. It was
No, it wasn't that trivial because they all thought of things as being substances. They thought of energy as a substance. So it didn't seem at all mysterious that you would possess the substance and then you could lose the substance and give the substance to somebody else.
If you push something on the ground, it was just going to come to a halt because there was going to be friction and so on. You didn't have nice, air hockey tables that people use to demonstrate this stuff now with very low friction and so on. I mean, I suspect actually in Newton's time, I think it was a time soon after, at least, the Little Ice Age. So I think even kind of where Newton lived, probably the rivers were frozen much of the time. So maybe he did have the analog of the air hockey table. Maybe he could. I actually don't know. Maybe he.
Yes, maybe. I mean, obviously, the Newton's cradle probably wasn't invented by Newton. I mean, obviously, somebody previously had probably figured out you could bang a pendulum into a pendulum. But whatever.
He could have sort of slid things around on these frozen rivers, and known that had a notion of a lack of kind of frictional force. Actually, it's a good history footnote thing to look up. Since the
Yeah, I don't know. See, a lot of this stuff you're just saying that Newton put together a lot of stuff, but you can sort of say to yourself, somebody must have imagined throwing a rock and being able to throw it faster and faster, and get the idea that they could throw it so fast, if the world was round, that it wouldn't go round. They must have thought of that once they knew the world was a sphere. Somebody must have thought about, well, what if you did go fast enough to escape the roundness?
I know the Central England temperature measurement, I think, was started in 1650. So it must have covered the time. It's the longest running kind of measurement of temperatures on the Earth that exists, and so that must cover the time of Newton. So anyway, something to look up. But in any case, back to this. So in sort of the Newton's idea of how mechanics worked,
I guess we can play some more of this. What the hell? It doesn't have he hasn't got the register up yet of subjects he covers, so I don't know what he's going to say. So I don't know whether the subject's going to be all that interesting or not. Let's see. I found out that Mindless Marbles is a stalker. Be careful. He might be listening. Yeah, well, the fact that he's a kook, is already well established, and the fact that he will apply whatever underhanded and malicious, he certainly endorses people who behave that way on the internet. All right, laughing my ass off at the anvil on scale on the treadmill. Ian either can't understand your arguments or it's bad faith. Well, I'm just saying, can you imagine how somebody couldn't understand the argument and couldn't see how these aren't the same experiments at all? I mean, you'd have to even concede as soon as you put something on a treadmill, you're really not doing the same thing because you're not making the mass move. You're just making wheels spin. An airplane isn't going to take off because you make the wheels spin really fast, right? So, obviously it's not the same. And the fact that he doesn't even say that in his previous video, where he doesn't even say, well, yeah, this isn't exactly the same experiment. I mean, he can't even concede that. And he's saying here it's a perfect debunk. Here's experimental evidence that what he said doesn't work, when it's nothing like what he was arguing about. I mean, it just is amazingly bad character. I don't follow his stuff, so no idea if he is capable of being that dumb. Well, he's clearly capable of faking experiments. I mean, we can say that much now pretty sure, that he'll do whatever he has to do to get the outcome to come out the way he wants. He just doesn't care how many corners he's going to cut or how big a cheat he's going to make. So you can't trust him about anything, because clearly he's on a mission from God. Yeah.
That weren't acted on by a force would just go in straight lines. And for example, light. You shine a laser somewhere, it just kind of goes in a straight line. But more precisely, you can think of it as going from where it starts to where it ends by the shortest path.
And yeah, it goes in a very straight line in a very narrow field in a way. So it's a very discrete straight line. And how does your wave theory make any sense in that context? How does your field know that it's only this little tiny bit of space that I'm supposed to be allowing this field to exist in? How does the field know that? How does the magnetic field know? Oh, it's not supposed to spread. Come on, too silly.
And in normal geometry, you take a piece of string, you pull on the ends, the string will go straight. The shortest path between 2 points is a straight line. However, if if you're on a curved space, so for example, instead of the string just being out in the air, so to speak, it's on the surface of a sphere, let's say, the string doesn't get to go in a purely straight line because it's following the surface of the sphere, but it gets to go on a great circle in the case of the sphere. It gets to go on a path that happens to be curved there. If you imagine that the thing is on kind of a table that has a depression in the middle.
All right, well, that's a big faker, okay? That's a two-dimensional example. So you have to do the pulling all the strings. You have a bunch of strings going out, and frankly, the curve is just a consequence of you pulling on all the strings, and so every string you hit is moving in, and you're getting pulled by the strings. That's how the theory is explained. I mean, that's how it's taught at the most prestigious universities in the world teaching it. That's how they're teaching it, as mock gravity. They're teaching it as a constant pulling force, okay, applied by fluid dynamics, essentially. It's a vacuum cleaner, for fuck's sake. You're just saying that every little piece of matter has a space vacuum inside of it, and it's just sucking space. And the space somehow, because the space is being sucked in a direction, everything has to move in the sucking direction. It's a fucking infantile, it's a juvenilely silly explanation, frankly. It's got no physical properties. It's just nonsense. You might as well say it's ropes.
Then these shortest paths will end up being deformed by the presence of that depression. And then, so that's kind of Einstein's idea of how things work in physical space, is that the space is curved as a result of the presence of mass, and the presence of that curvature means that the shortest paths between 2 points are no longer straight lines. They're instead deflected, lines that are deflected, and that deflection turns out to correspond to the deflection associated with gravity. So that was kind of the idea of...
Gravity is just the inverse square law. That's gravity, frankly, okay? It's point source, therefore spherical, and you're basically just saying the stuff spreads with different distance. It's a divergence, not an anti-divergence. It's a divergence of the mechanism spreads with distance, and that's it. And so that's all he's explaining with this complex, silly idea. And that takes energy out of the universe. And so even though gravity moves at the same speed as the other physical forces that are actual forces and actually push things, we're going to pretend it's made of a completely different mechanism. So even though it's just a coincidence that gravity has the same speed limitation that a photon has, we're not going to take that piece of information and do the logical thing, which is to assume, for the sake of argument, that there seems to be some probability that these things might be the same mechanism, just in a slightly different form, and they're creating these effects.
Einstein's idea. So one of the things that came up in the equations that Einstein derived for the relationship between curvature and mass and so on was the prediction that the universe should expand, and that the sort of, in some sense, the total amount of space, the total distance, by amount of space, we can say, how long does it take to go from here to there? That the time...
It doesn't make much sense to say the universe expands when you're talking about vacuum cleaners with no outlet. So you'd almost argue that the consequence of his theory on space is that the universe has to contract, because where are you getting the space from? The new space that's flying into the singularities.
Time it would take to go all the way across the universe, or to go a quarter of the way across the universe or something, would be longer later on than it was earlier in the history of the universe. So in other words, that's the sense in which the universe would be expanding. So Einstein sort of saw that was what the equations implied, said that couldn't possibly be right. We know the universe isn't expanding. He said, look, it's not expanding. It kind of reminds one of the pre-Copernicus kind of view of, look, we know the Earth isn't...
Right, so then Einstein invented a constant that was pulling the universe back together again. And you almost say, why would you need that? If you're consolidating matter into bigger and bigger things, you're actually making the universe have less energy in it. So this might be as good a time as any to deal with a comment I got. All right, you say that breaking a big thing into small things creates free energy. I'm saying if you believe in conservation of momentum, okay, that has to be conserved. That the total mass and velocity in the universe has to be conserved. Then yes, if you break big things into small things and then you conserve the momentum, that is the same, you take the 5-ton train going 10 miles an hour and you convert it to a 10-ton train going 5 miles an hour, you have to conserve the momentum. And if you conserve the momentum, the kinetic energy dramatically reduces if you make things bigger, heavier, consolidating the matter. And if you particulate the matter, that is, you make it smaller, you have the opposite effect of creating free energy or more kinetic energy than you started with. Those are just facts. Can you explain why this would be? Because they're just facts. The kinetic energy formula demands it. If you conserve momentum, then the kinetic energy theory demands that you, every time you interact a heavy thing and convert it into a light thing, you take the energy and migrate it, either by breaking the big thing or by making the big thing hit a smaller thing, you will increase the energy in the universe. The energy is proportional to the mass. Breaking the mass into smaller parts doesn't change the total mass. Yes, of course it changes the velocity if you conserve the momentum. Okay, and so you shouldn't change the total energy. But of course you will, because you will be changing the velocities. Alright, so that's probably enough. Been over that so many times, it really shouldn't require further elaboration.
Moving around the sun, we know the Earth is stationary because we're here standing on it, so to speak. But Einstein made the same mistake. He always characterized it as his biggest science mistake. And so he added a term to his equations, the so-called cosmological term, which...
Right, but those equations were already a bunch of additions and crapola stuck in there. Inventions of whole new concepts of tensors and this and that. So the math is already a big pile of contrived crap.
Would sort of, which would kind of go against this force of expansion.
It's just the obligation is to make something that fits. And so he engineered math to fit a circumstance. And one of the circumstances was the perihelion of Mercury. And so he created a whole pile of crap physics, including the crap physics that light is bent twice as much by gravity than physical matter. It's crap. And all it really is doing, if some people who know math, the whole idea is really he is processing the sun. And the precession of the sun is now processing Mercury because it's so incredibly close to the sun compared to the other planets. So the little tiny wobble in the sun's center of mass creates a wobble in the orbit of Mercury. And it doesn't affect the other planets because they're just too far away to be able to see. The resolution diminishes with distance. So if I wobble something, you can't see it wobbling. If you get far enough away, you can't see it anymore wobbling. So there's a wobble in the sun. Mercury is really close, so it can see it. The Earth is way too far away, can't see it.
That was otherwise predicted. Okay, well, it turns out it was a mistake, and a chap called Edwin Hubble, about less than 10 years later, observed the expansion of the universe. So in other words, what that means is that in some sense, the space.
All right, so Hubble didn't believe that, all that kind of crap. You can go into all the details about what people actually believed and what they're stuck, having their name stuck on and all that kind of crap. But, expansion is still a very unproven concept, that there's any obligation that the universe, that things are objects, that there's any extra space being created in space to expand space. It's really just, I'd say on its face, it's just wacky theory. It's just too silly. Shouldn't bother even trying to contrive that into a reality. Totally unnecessary. Useless.
Is expanding, there is, you could say, in Einstein's view of things, there is more space because it takes longer to go some percentage of the way across the universe later in the history of the universe than earlier in the history of the universe. Now, it can get
so this idea that it takes longer because you're taking a more and more curved path. Well, the very idea that you're taking any curved path is just such a pile of shit. Yeah, I mean, really, the physical universe doesn't work that way. Things don't just ambiguously, for no reason, take this curved path. And frankly, it wouldn't matter. It's just gravity. Why would gravity necessitate the universe getting bigger and bigger? Too silly. Obviously, it would necessitate that the universe eventually, all the matter consolidates. And that would be perfectly consistent with a Big Bang theory. So if you're going to bother with this Big Bang theory, it seems to make perfect good sense that the whole thing would contract again. If it could expand, then why couldn't it contract? So you'd say, yeah, that makes perfectly good sense. The supernova explodes and then the matter reconsolidates. Wow, that's not much of a reach, is it? No, it's no reach at all. It makes perfectly good sense. The energy, the thing collects a whole bunch of matter, it explodes, it shoots out 80% of its matter, and the 20% left over, it reconfigures back into a sun and a solar system. Wow, that makes perfectly good sense to me.
Complicated because if you're 1 second after the beginning of the universe and you say, well, gosh, you can get all the way across the universe and it's going to take you 3 seconds. Well, you didn't have 3 seconds to get all the way across the universe in the 1 second since the universe started, so to speak. So, the expansion of the universe in some sense is not chaseable. That's a general feature of it. It doesn't, depending on its details, it can end up sort of not being chaseable by by anything that was sort of trying to get to the edge of the universe. By the time you get there, it's expanded. Okay, so in the usual sort of view of how space works, and the traditional view, and I would say the classic view, the classical view of how space works, it is this idea that the universe expands, the distance between things gets larger, and in some sense, space is expanding. So you could say there's more universe there. There's more sort of distance in space available. Okay, but in that picture of things, there is a description of things like curvature in space, but space isn't really a thing. Space is just this sort of background that has certain characteristics, but it's not sort of in and of itself a thing. Now it can have.
I mean, there's no point. There's no point in saying something can have properties and still be nothing. You can't be nothing and have properties. It's not possible. It's just so irrational. Ugh, God, I wish they wouldn't talk this shit.
Very violent characteristics, like it can form event horizons around black holes. It can be very distorted, but it's still just a background. Now, in our model of physics, space really does become a thing. Space is no longer just a background that you put things in. Space is an actual structure of its own. It's some kind of graph where there are just points, kind of atoms of space, and there are connections between those atoms of space that form
ropes. Yeah, fuck. Just too silly. Yeah. The fact that there's force and matter, I mean, this shouldn't be complicated to people. There's stuff going the speed of light, and then there's everything else. I mean, not even to be able to make those distinctions. The only way things communicate is by sending speed of light debris their way. So it's only through debris fields that you see anything.
Giant network. And there is nothing in the universe other than that network. There's no background. It's not like the network is put into something. All you know about the universe is there's this network and it's atoms of space that are related to each other, that are effectively connected to each other. Okay, so in that picture, the universe consists of some number of atoms of space. Maybe it's a 1 with 400 zeros after it, 10 to the 400 atoms of space that make up our universe. And in that case, that's the universe and everything in it. So that big network has to represent both the thing we call space and all the things like particles, like electrons and photons and all those kinds of things that exist in space. And the picture is that there's this network, and it's kind of always bubbling around. It's always rewriting itself. It's always updating itself. It has there's always activity in it.
Oh, it's just too silly. I mean, frankly, it's just really easy to sit there and isolate these different properties. The force has the property of going the speed of light and being infinitesimally very, very small, but real. Okay, it has a real mass because it can cause real effects when it impacts something. And, why make it any more complicated? Matter is obviously electrons and protons. They're the substantial players. That's the game. That's the stuff that has all the appearance of being quantizable in the sense that you can add an electron to something and you add a unit of charge. And you can't, in fact, add half a unit of charge or a quarter unit of charge. You can only add a unit of it. The quantum element seems quite demonstrated in the evidence. Why play this game? There's matter and there's force. And all there are effects, emergent effects created because that matter and the force are in patterns. So the arrangement of the matter can create a pattern in the force, and that can be magnetism or electricity or a photon.
And that the fact that there's activity is the reason that one part of space can sort of communicate with another part, because there's activity here and that's connected to activity. That activity sort of entrains activity a little bit over, and that entrains activity further over, and so on.
By magical blah 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 activity conveyance. No, it's by forces communicating. All of it is forces communicating.
And then if you let the activity run for a little while, a certain amount of time, then the thing that is over here will eventually be able to affect the thing that's over here. And that's kind of what knits together some coherent structure of space. If it wasn't for that activity, there'd be just all these separate atoms of space. They would have no relationship to each other. They would have no communication between each other. There wouldn't be this thing that we can think of as this kind of background of space. And when it comes in our models to things like particles, we imagine that those are certain sort of robust features of this network that represents the structure of space. Much like an analogy.
Robust hunks of space, whatever. Just why even bother what it's elementally made out of? Just be consistent to its properties. All you know its properties. Who cares what it's made out of? Just give it the properties. Shit.
I tend to use in a fluid like water, we know there's a bunch of molecules bouncing around underneath, but we think of it as this sort of continuous fluid, but we can have features like a little eddy in the water, which is made of molecules. But
so we know that that's happening because of the electrons and the atoms and the protons, and that's why the atoms are stuck or adhering to each other, is because they're creating an opportunity for that. There's a piece of the water molecule that says, look, I'm a proton. Yeah, no, the electrons are over there. I'm a proton. And it's just inviting another water molecule to stick in there.
Which molecules it's made of can change over time, but that eddy has some kind of character, some kind of continued persistence that is independent of the details of the molecules which it's made of. It's just its overall structure has a certain persistence. And that's how we think particles like electrons and so on work in the universe, in the actual space that exists in the universe. So in some sense, in our model, the only thing in the universe is space. But space has features that lead to the kinds of things we know about, like all these particles and so on. The particles and all these features of space that we know and care about are a tiny little piece of froth on top of the main activity of the universe, which is just the continual rewriting of pieces of space, the sort of knitting together of pieces of space. So in our model, the expansion of the universe can actually be a growth in this network. You could start off with a very small number of atoms of space, maybe just one, and over time, this network is rewritten, and what was 3 atoms of space will turn into something with 5 atoms of space, let's say. It's all just, you can kind of see it as just rewriting of this network. And so...
Yeah, sorry, I fell asleep.
In our
yeah, obviously there's all causes and effects. So why use words like rewriting? You end up going from a cause state to an effect state to a cause state to an effect state. It's just cause and effect by these rules. Yes, we all should be able to agree that's what rational models should contain, is the update.
Model, there actually can be more space in the universe. There can be, unlike in general relativity, in standard sort of classical physics, so to speak, you can, I don't really know what to call our kind of physics, because in the sort of nomenclature of physics, there's classical physics, which was before the 1920s, and that did not deal with quantum mechanics and so on. And then there's what is usually called modern physics, which is 1920s on. I suppose when I was learning about that stuff in the 1970s.
What's the point? There are two different subjects, quantum electrodynamics and this wooey bent space relativity crap. It's two different fucking theories, physical theories made out of two physically different mechanisms. There's no point in saying classical is just the elimination of one of those. Classical would have to be the elimination of both of those moronic ideas.
60s, it was still somewhat modern. But now we're another 50 years later, and I think it's kind of funny that it's still called modern. It reminds me of these places where, like when I was in Oxford, there are these different colleges that are part of the university in Oxford, and one of those colleges is called New College. And you might guess New College is actually the second oldest college, dating from sometime in the 1300s or something. It was called New College to distinguish it from the original college. But of course, now it's not new because it dates from the 1300s. So modern physics is actually 100 years old. And now we have a very different view of how the foundations of physics work that's come out of our physics project. And I guess it needs a new name. So if people have suggestions for that name, they should make it, because it's got to make it into the textbooks at some point. And you can't have a section or a class on modern physics. It has to be, postmodern is not the right word, because that has too many other connotations. And also, that's kind of not building for the future, because that's just a moment in time type designation. But in any case, in our view of physics,
the word would be true physics. Yeah, so that's what you're trying to get to, is the truth. And I don't think you're there yet, buddy. Don't think so.
The space consists of this kind of discrete collection of atoms of space, and there can be more of it over time. And in fact, the expectation is that the expansion of the universe is associated with the actual making of more atoms of space in the universe. Now, it gets
atoms of space. I mean, why? What the fuck? Atoms of space. Jesus Christ. Fuck.
a lot trickier than that when you really start drilling down and asking about what time is, because I'm talking about how the universe, the network is getting rewritten, but different parts of the network, they will have the possibility of being rewritten, but you say, are they actually rewritten? Well, you can have this notion of different kind of reference frames where the different parts of the universe are kind of rewritten in different orders and all kinds of different things like this. So it gets a little bit more complicated. But the basic idea is you can think of it as being, okay, at this moment,
like Richard Feynman, you could borrow energy from the future, okay, and use it in the past. And that makes mathematical sense.
The beginning of the universe, there were only 2 atoms of space or something. Now there are 10 to the 400 atoms of space. There are progressively more atoms of space. There's kind of more universe there. Now, weird things can happen in our models. Like pieces of the universe can break off. And that can happen in, inside, if you have a black hole that's spinning too rapidly, you'll actually have a part of the universe that breaks off as a separate, disconnected piece of the network. So it's, you can both...
Disconnected piece of the network. I mean, these are silly combinations of words, right? Disconnected piece of the car. I mean, what do you mean a disconnected? It's not part of the car, but it's connected, but it's not. It's disconnected. Yeah, it's connectability. It's connect-abled. It can be connected or it can be disconnected. La 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 la. Oh, fuck! I hate this planet. I like Wolfram's arguments, fuck you, of discrete atoms of space. Well, fuck you. Everything we historically taught was continuous. Matter, light, etc. became quantized. It will be the same for space, in my opinion. But you're an idiot, fuck. I'm sorry, you're a fucking idiot. There's absolutely no evidence that 3 dimensions aren't perfectly functional and there's nothing expanding somewhere and all this bullshit. I mean, why invent this crap? Ugh, god damn it. It's just so stupid. Oh, God. Holy ghost crapola. You'll never prove any of that crap. And there's just not anything indicating it's true. Nothing. There's no experiment showing hey, look at that, the space got bigger. Fuck you.
You can both make more space, and you can actually decrease the number of atoms of space as well through the actual rewrite of the network. You can also have pieces that break off that are like, marooned pieces of the universe, so to speak. So in our model of physics, yes, it is possible to make more universe. You can make more atoms of space. And it's... But that's something that is, as I would say, a little bit different.
Wait, it just doesn't make any sense. It's just fucking stupid. And all this because of redshift, right? So instead of the rational, sensible theory that, yes, photons traveling a long distance are likely to have hit a few hydrogen atoms and have likely had their frequency reduced by the scattering, interaction, a proven phenomenon, right? That your frequency will be reduced, your energy, the light's energy will be reduced by being scattered, by transmitted by a hydrogen atom. No, instead of recognizing, yeah, of course, that probably happens a lot to photons that travel billions of light years. Yeah, okay. That makes, no, sensible answer? Fuck that. Let's go with the wooey crap that little blobs of space are just popping into existence. I'm a blob of space. I'm a blob of nothing, and I'm just popping in here by the nothing mechanism that nothinged me into nothing existence. Why do that? I mean, it's just, again, this is like you people showing up in court with the invisible man did it theory. Ugh, this is crap theory.
Different in character from the way one would normally think about things in standard classical general relativity, classical sort of theory of gravity. You really don't talk about more space. You just talk about a parameter that is the radius of the universe, basically, that can increase, which is a little different than saying there's more space there. Now, you can kind of, I suppose, when you start thinking, even in classical quantum, whatever physics, you can, maybe we should talk about our physics as being rulal physics, because it relates to pieces of the Rulliad, which is this kind of entangled limit of all possible computation, so to speak, of which we get to sort of observe.
The Rulliad. The Ruliozoic. We're heading into the Ruliozoic era. We really are going backward. Idiocracy is winning. Smart people talking absolute douchebag shit. It's pathetic.
Just one slice. In any case, the thing that let's see, I was going to say is gosh, that was a mistake for me to have a digression there, because I think I lost my train of thought. We're talking about.
God, this is. I'm having a deja vu moment. I looked at his eyebrows, and that gave me a queer feeling. And then this whole event where he talks about losing his train of thought, and the thing, it just seems so like, oh, I've done this before. I've made this video already.
Kind of, can there be more? Yes. So in traditional physics, the vacuum, the supposed emptiness of space, is not actually a vacuum, is not actually empty. According to quantum mechanics, there are always these quantum fluctuations. And in fact, every particle, electrons, photons, whatever else, virtual versions of that particle, together with its antiparticle, continually come.
Virtual versions of that particle. Virtual ones. I mean, really, to use virtual, when you're talking about a comic book or something, that's okay. But, I mean, this is physics. We're going to talk about virtual particles? Oh, fuck. And God damn it. I just hate this planet. I hate you fucking dumb cunts. You fall for this crap. To be clear. What do you mean to be clear? You were pretty clear. I like Wolfram's argument. Discrete space of atoms. Fuck you. To be clear. I don't agree with any of the Rulliad and hypergraph stuff, but I like the atoms of space. Well, I'm sorry you like it, because it's just fucking idiotic. I mean, look, you want to say that there is something in a location, or there's nothing in a location. Like you want to make the universe out of X's and O's. But there have to be X's and O's. They can't be whatevers, and you can't make X's and you can't make O's. You either have a piece of matter, no matter. You either have a photon or no photon. You know what I mean? There's a little X's that make up the photon, little X's that make up the matter. Okay, and there's O's in between them. You want to say that's what it is? It's a geometry of space, that there's little cubes of space even? Little cubes of space? Well, I'll go for that, as long as you agree that the cube can either be full or empty. I assume you never watched this. I don't know what you're assuming. I'm sure what you're, whatever. This, and discussed space atoms with you. What? I can assure you I never watched this and discussed space atoms with you. Well, I didn't say you were giving me deja vu, or some of the deja vu of the video. Unless I'm part of the trick. Yeah, well, whatever. I wasn't including you, sorry. I didn't even give you a thought, frankly. When I was talking about the deja vu part was just what he was saying. And I just definitely got the impression I've been here before. But whatever.
Into existence and go out of existence all the time. And there's this kind of 0 point fluctuations, quantum fluctuations that exist even in a vacuum. So space in quantum mechanics is constantly bubbling with these different particles coming into existence, going out of existence. We don't get to make direct observations of those things, though there are some experiments.
I just mean, there's no experiments. It's just such a pile of shit. It's just, stuff is bubbling into existence and bubbling out of existence. Jesus Christ. Oh, unless you provide me with, unless you paint this on an elephant's penis, okay, I'm not going to believe. You have to have really good evidence of this. You cannot possibly suggest this wacky bullshit on the nothing they have as evidence. And it's nothing. Ryan Gosling misses the point in regards to the scale. He doesn't miss the point. He's fucking raping the truth. So it's that simple. He's raping it. Oh, God damn it. If the anvil was pushed faster than the time spent in gravity, it would weigh much of anything. So that's obviously, again, I can't make the argument any simpler. It's 9.8 meters per second force. If I move something through that force very quickly, then it's only going to be a little tiny bit per second. Fuck. Endeavor to persevere, Gary. Endeavor to persevere. That's all I can do. So I'll do it.
Can do would show the existence of those kinds of effects. Now, in our models, our kind of knitting together of the structure of space by the rewriting of this network is kind of a very low-level version of those particle-antiparticle vacuum fluctuations. Vacuum fluctuations are a kind of sign of that same sort of activity through the knitting together of the structure of space.
It's just amazing that he's trying to contrive some new Holy Ghost thing. I mean, whatever we want to call that. The spiritually, okay? The spirit spiritually, okay? And he's trying to create some new spirit thing to shove into the religion. I mean, it's just... What the fuck for? Why are you trying to match this to the crazy narrative? Oh, shit. It's just like Jesus reconstructionists, Well, he was just a man, but he did have superpowers, and, well, he was extraordinarily large feet, and, so it kind of proves he must be a outworlder. Yeah, he was an outworlder. Jesus actually came from another universe. It was not. He came from another planet in a far, far galaxy, far, far away, and something like that. Anyway, the Holy Ghost. Yes, the Holy Ghost. What a concept. They ought to have. They ought to just call this what it is. This is just religion. Physics is just a religion.
That one has in that we have this kind of knitting together of structure of space, and sort of high above that, you can kind of see the effects of that in these virtual particles that come into existence, go out of existence. It's always been kind of a mystery that when these virtual particles exist and they keep on bubbling around, they have a large effective mass.
Well, I guess they're not virtual then, are they? If they popped into existence, they can't really be virtual, can they? Fuck, they're holograms. What are these people talking about? I mean, it's just they're lightsabers. Oh, okay. Damn it.
They have such a large effective mass that if that mass existed in the universe, it would curl the universe up into a little tiny ball, and there wouldn't be much universe. It wouldn't be able to expand in the way that the universe has expanded. And in our models, that doesn't happen because, in a sense, all that energy, all that mass that's associated with, in the end, virtual particles, is the same activity that is creating space in the first place. And so that means that it doesn't have that same gravitational effect. In the usual theory, there's gravity on the one hand, which is being affected by all of these virtual particles.
Right, so they're making gravity, but they're expanding the universe at the same rate that gravity is being created, so it's getting bigger as it's getting stronger, but it's getting weaker because it's more to lift, but, it's heavier, but it's lighter because the weightlifter's bigger, and, this all makes sense, right? You understand exactly what I'm saying, right? I understand it's a fucking religion, and it's a silly fucking religion. It's sillier religion.
And the virtual particles, they're sort of a separate thing from gravity. It's like on top of, the gravity is sort of on top of that, whereas in our models, these are all integrated together, and so there's no longer that sort of paradox. So good question, though. All right, let's see. Rock asks, well, actually, there's one here from Erin. Why does running my water pick interrupt Bluetooth connections? So showing minor cultural knowledge of water.
Whatever. It's a fucking oscillator. Let's just move on to something else.
I argue that couldn't be true. Instead, language gave way to complex thoughts.
Whatever. Language gave... Well, let's see what he's going to say. Well, that's way too different a subject, so we're not going to play with that. So I do have another video by the light guy who's making the wave defense again. He's again proselytizing a pile of crap, frankly, about how the experiments show it's a wave when no, they really don't do that. But whatever. The fact that light is made of stuff, that's a good argument to make. That a photon isn't a fucking thing, okay? It's an event. So that would be a key statement I would make. Okay, in the future, when they figure out the truth matters, they're going to say things like a photon is an event. Photons aren't things. They're patterns, and the pattern creates an effect. And the effect is what we call a photon. But it's not a photon. Alright. Is it more likely that all the PhDs are being fooled? They're fucking douchebags with their heads way up their fucking PhD fucking goddamn asses, just like this douchebag. Oh, in our rigor rockin' fickin' puckin' theory of our matrix bookum, we suckum doot. I mean, it's all fucking goddamn... You might as well just be going goo gaga. I mean, this is all crap. Are being fooled. No, they're assholes. Or do you think they are intentionally lying? No, I think they're really fucking goddamn fucked up. Okay, their brain is not logically ordered. Okay, so they ain't getting it. Alright, about the modern physics consensus. Okay, intentionally lying. I don't even know what you're even talking about. Do I think the religious people are lying? Yes, I do, actually. So do I think the physicist, let's see what the word would be. No, I just think they're nerds. They can't figure out where, like this douchebag can't figure out, maybe I should buy a real shirt someday. And not look like a nerd. Maybe I should, human up my act a little bit. But no, he wants to wear the label. I am a pocket protector, douchebaggy intellectual. Blah, 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 blah. So it's all wrapped up in their sense of what they are. They're very good drivers, and they're driving a fucking virtual bus, okay? They don't even have a bus. They're just sitting in their little room with their crayons going, I'm driving the bus. I'm driving the physics bus. They're delusional fucking douchebag idiots. They haven't spent 10 seconds in reality. All these people that want to know, are they people, what the fuck? Are these PhDs people that work, that want to know, or are they people that want to believe? Well, I'm just saying, obviously you have to want this because it's so disgusting that why the fuck would you go anywhere near it? It's sticky, it's smelly, it's disgusting. Why would you go and touch the invisible man theory? Why as an engineer or a sensible, rational person would you start talking about virtual particles and poofing in and out of existence? Why would you do any of that if you had any regard for like a rational physical explanation of the universe? I mean, obviously they're chasing unicorn farts. I mean, they just love the smell. I want to go to the singularity and be a special PhD nerd in the singularity. I don't know what they're fucking imagining they're going to, what the prize is for this bullshit. I guess that's all that it really is. It's just that they can count toothpicks, right? You spill a box of toothpicks, they can count all the toothpicks. And so they think knowing how many toothpicks are on the floor is the most spectacular thing to know in the universe. And so they're just trying to make this, look, my Asperger's is the most incredible thing ever. You know, when it's just fucking retarded. Yes, you know how to tie together a bunch of fucking convoluted crap and pretend it's a virtual sweater. Yeah, you can never wear it, but, you know, it looks like a sweater. You just can't wear it. Accurate description of wise men saying I have license, see, just eating, devouring, and even enjoying another living thing. Yeah, well, all that's bad, too. I mean, they all show no character. I mean, this stupid bozo had kids. I mean, all these morons thought, oh, it's a great idea for me to have a bunch of spawn and, you know, go upstream and spawn, and I'll make a new fish. You know, they won't be as smart as me, though, because I'm really smart, and he's not going to be as smart as me, I bet. And what the fuck are they even thinking there, morons? They kid, I mean, if you had any scientific interest, why would you say, oh yeah, I would love a wonderful distraction like raising a child? No, you'd be really focused on your mission, like Tesla or something. At least Tesla was a sincere kook. They want to believe because they wanted to know they would be testing each other for evidence. If they wanted to know, they would be testing each other for evidence. They certainly would be fighting the fight, right? They'd be doing like what Newton, in Newton's time, you know, they really did fight with each other. But they still did this air of, you know what I mean? So when Newton wrote a letter to Leibniz, even though he hated his guts, he'd say, you're honorable, most fantastic human ever to exist. I love you so much, and I'm so privileged to see you still are healthy and thriving. And then he'd go on to insult the fuck out of him, you know. They want to believe because they want to know they would be, yes, teaching each other, testing each other for evidence. But yes, that's exactly what science is lacking now, is they're all a bunch of goddamn fucking snowflakes. You know, they don't have arguments. Yeah, unfortunately, the noise just gets louder and louder. There's fewer and fewer people who want to talk anything rational about what the physical evidence actually shows. I mean, clearly there's no evidence that anybody wishes to challenge me with actual arguments on the actual subject. When Copernicus came up with the planets orbiting the sun, you know, I don't know if I really want to do this, you know. It's hard enough keeping track of what happened, you know, 400 years ago. Let's not go back, you know, 600. I think only the top scientists could wrap their head around it. The existing models were so complicated that, yes, what good would any of them be? Because they depended on such, you know, they had to contrive Einsteinian type nonsense to explain why stars disappeared behind other stars and all this other, you know, all this twisted, weird orbital motion. And it was all, the confusion was basically because, yeah, your instinct isn't to think in terms of, you know, things moving in, what's the word, not parabola, you know, ellipses. Yeah, it's not your first thought, isn't, oh yeah, it's going around in some weird ellipse that's processing in time. Yeah, that isn't that's not your first impression. But then if you know what the gravity's doing, with the equal force, then you can figure out why that would still work. Let's see. And they talked to the public, most probably thought it was insane. I don't think it was that hard an argument to make, even back then, that the sun is what we're being affected by, that we are orbiting that thing. So I don't think that was that hard to imagine. Adding it up with all the facts, that's the hard part. Okay, making every observation consistent with that theory is the more difficult part. But the fact that you would say, I think underlying is, look, Darwin's grandfather was an evolutionist. Okay, he believed in evolution before Darwin. Okay, so Darwin's grandfather was an evolutionist in the sense that he didn't believe in God and basically thought everything was, rose out of the earth. And, so I'm just saying it, and all Darwin did was prove that theory. Okay, Darwin didn't invent the theory; he basically proved the theory, and came up with a term for it: natural selection, a mechanism for how you could take something very simple and over a long period of time turn it into something. So his grandfather already knew this is an old story. Okay, the Earth has been changing for millions and millions of years. Blah blah blah. So he already understood the theory, in a way, without having the detail of being able to say, what's the mechanism? So I'm sure there was plenty of people 1,000 years ago who looked at the sun and said, yeah, we're orbiting that. Yes, respect should go where it's due. You might be few people on Earth that sharing knowledge and doing the hard work. Respect for that. Well, whatever. I'm not doing anything, frankly. It's all my brain's idea. I don't have anything to do with it. I'm just a victim. I didn't ask to be me. And I certainly didn't make me, and I didn't do anything. I'm just watching the show. Like you, I'm just in a chair watching. Another thing they had to wrap their heads around was that the Earth was moving, but they couldn't feel it. Well, I don't think that's hard to figure out, frankly. I just don't think that's hard to figure out. There's so many ways that we can move where we're not going to be aware of it, I suppose. And even the whole, they were trying to fly back then, so there probably a lot of people jumped in the air and tried to fly, and they maybe they got a sense that, oh yeah, you feel different when you're not connected to the Earth. So it couldn't be true that the Earth orbited the sun. Yeah, well, whatever the arguments would be. We can't recite them for people, but I'm sure there were people who were pretty damn sure, yeah, the world's not flat. I mean, there's probably lots of people who figured out it's not flat long before they proved it wasn't flat. So I guess I could jump one more ahead on the Wolfram video and see if there's any subject here.
And can be transported around our body to provide the raw material. The oxygen is part of the raw material for metabolism, for the chemical reactions that happen in our body. So we need a certain amount of oxygen. And I think the usual claim for why we yawn is that if the carbon dioxide level, which is, we inhale oxygen, we exhale carbon dioxide. If we, it's not all carbon dioxide that we exhale, but there's more carbon dioxide in what we exhale than what we inhale. But what we inhale is, actually I had a little sensor, I think, even I can say that it's let's see, 500 parts per million, I think it's in parts per million. Right now,
I think yawning is probably connected to some other really functional activity, and we just don't, obviously the evolution doesn't really get rid of parts, it just repurposes parts. So yawning might be what some stupid primitive organism does to swallow, And so it was a function, this maximum expansion and and it was just to clear its throat or some other mechanism, and we just have it as a leftover. So it still exists, but it doesn't really have the original function, and it just might be another one, like a sneeze. It's it also creates a reboot. I mean, why should quickly exhaling, blowing things clear, why should that have that kind of reboot your brain effect? It shouldn't be rebooting your whole brain, but in a way it does. So it's probably its original purpose was more some other thing, frankly. It did a completely different thing, and it got converted into, It's like the lungs weren't really, they were ballasts originally, right? I mean, they weren't for breathing or converting oxygen. I mean, the original lung was bladder,
right here, so to speak. But in general, it's like 400, 500. Depends where you are. If you're inside and there's lots of people, you're in a room and it's full of people breathing out, and there's no fresh air coming in. If you take a carbon dioxide meter, you'll see it climbing up. It'll get to 1,000 parts per million, I think, and go beyond when you're in a stuffy room, so to speak. People are breathing out a certain amount of carbon dioxide, breathing in oxygen. I think the claim is that one yawns because somehow one's brain is sensing sort of there's too much carbon dioxide. We need to gulp in more oxygen. Quite why that relates to being tired, I'm not quite sure. I'm not sure. As I tell you that explanation, which is one that I've heard over decades ago, I'm not quite as convinced by it as I might be. So, but that's, I think, the traditional explanation. Now, are yawns contagious? Everything is somehow contagious. There are in our brains, sometimes people call them mirror neurons. There's definitely.
Yes. Oh, yes. We mimic what we see. Yes. So what? Everything's not contagious. It's a little bit too bold a statement.
Summer, the birds heard those sounds all over England, and birds started making those sounds, and it was super confusing because you would hear that sound, and it's like, is that a bird? Is that a phone? You couldn't tell. Anyway, just an amusing thing that happened. That was sort of an adaptation of the birds to their environment.
Oh, frankly, I haven't seen that phenomenon, actually, where the birds make the phone sound. But I'm not saying it didn't happen, but I never saw a bird do it. All right, let's see. My point is, to really understand quantum field theory, whatever, really understand, yes, you really understand our faggoty little virtual nonsense theory, our string theory, as wrong as they might be. To really understand quantum field theory, our string theory, as wrong as they might be, to really understand the theory, you are going to need to spend a huge chunk of your life studying. Well, do I really need to really understand? I'm just saying, I don't think I really need to know every detail of it to know it has axioms and premises in it that are provably not very viable. Okay. So I would argue that Einstein is telling me to believe that it's probable that just coincidentally the bent space thing moves at exactly the same speed as the force bits, the physical force bits that create charge and that cause all the other effects that we see as events in the universe. That speed of light is somehow duplicated by the magical amorphous bent spacey thing. So I'm saying that axiom alone, that premise of the argument, that included fact that it's just a coincidence because we have no other reason to make those two things connected to each other because they're such completely different events, bending of space and the moving of a particle. I'd say I can make a good argument that unless you got real show me evidence, God written on the penis of an elephant. I mean, show me the evidence. Forget it. Yeah, I can discount the theory because it's based on bullshit. I mean, as soon as they start talking about string theory, you can have little wiggly strings like violins, and then you can have little round strings that are like jellyfish. Oh, please. Why should I stay in that nursery school and listen to that crap? I don't need to, know every in and out of the nonsense theory to know we're in big trouble. It's like the Professor Lewin experiment. I mean, as soon as he's making free momentum in a direction, what other piece of evidence do I need that there's no fucking way this is a real experiment? There's no fucking way. There's something wrong with what he did because you can't fucking make free momentum. And then you just have to go look for what's wrong. Nobody thinks we have a theory of everything. I don't care what this conversation you have is just so pukey. Nobody thinks we have a theory of everything. I mean, what does that even mean? We don't need a theory of everything. We just need a good working model. But let's call that a theory of everything. And the fact is that a lot of people think they have a good working model. I certainly think I have a good working model. So fuck you. Nobody. And most believe the theory is out there. I don't even know what that means, okay? So I'm just saying that most physicists seem quite comfortable saying that, oh yeah, I think it's pretty oh yes. This is, oh yeah, we're getting really close to the truth. That theory is going to explain why all massless forces travel at the same speed. Why would you try to explain that? That's just a fact. That's one of the things you just give up on, and you just say that's the way the universe works. I mean, there's no way you're going to sit there and, why is it the speed of light and it's not the speed of light squared? Or why isn't it half as fast? Like, we couldn't tell the difference anyway, right? Because the whole universe functions based on that speed. So it doesn't matter what the speed was. The speed could be anything, and the universe would work exactly the same. I mean, if the speed was tied to the size, I guess you'd have to say, because then you would change things if you change the speed, obviously, and you don't change the size. I think that would force a change. But it doesn't really matter. I mean, you really think that's the question to be answered? What is a photon? What's the nature of its momentum? That's physics? No, physics is understanding what the fuck's happening to the little bits that are moving and predicting what happens in the future. You don't need to know what the photon is made out of to know what it's going to do. Who cares? Beyond knowing what it does, who cares? Maybe I misunderstood, but weren't you just complaining that they aren't connecting the speed of gravity with the speed of light? Well, I'm saying, how are you connecting it? Where have you made a connection between what the fuck the mechanism? We know why the force bits are doing it is because they have to travel distance. They go from one distance to another distance. Then it takes time to go that distance, and that's their speed. Bent space has the same speed. It's not made of anything. It's not a force. It's some sort of amorphous mush, and it somehow is doing its effect at the same exact speed that particles move from one place to another? Come on. Discrete elements of energy move. Somehow it's moving the same speed as the discrete elements, but it's not made of discrete elements? That's the contradiction I'm talking about. How does that make any sense? The jello moves the same speed as the bullet. It doesn't make any sense. God. Isn't speed a effect of observing pre-made notions? What the fuck? What the hell? What's the point of talking to you people? This isn't complicated. Speed is just, yes, it's a fact that things can move distance and space. There's 3 dimensions of space. There's dimensions in the space. And things have to move in the dimensions, and they move at this speed. Who cares? Beyond any further conversation, there's nothing else to say. They have the property of a velocity. Why do I need to say anything more than that? And the property is that all these forces appear to have exactly the same speed. And it would be kind of ludicrous to say that's all just coincidental. It doesn't have to do with something elemental about them all being the same thing. The point is that all you need to know is force and matter, those two words. Physics is just force, the stuff moving the speed of light, and the stuff not moving the speed of light, the electrons and the protons. Oh, fuck. That will be the discrete element of gravity. I don't know what you're talking about. I think gravitons. Well, look, why are we talking? What's a graviton? Do you actually believe there's a thing that goes into something and hits it, and then the thing moves in the direction of the thing that hits it? That something can give something a negative momentum? I mean, what kind of graviton are you talking about? Now, if they believed in a graviton that hit something and pushed it, well, we could have a conversation then, because that sort of makes sense. But what's a graviton in the context of bent space? Where in what Wolfram just talked about is there any talk of there being particles that are making up the bent space? Where did he talk about the substance that makes the bent space happen? No, there was no conversation. There was just some notion that the space itself is bent. Gravitons are not Einstein's theory. Oh, fuck. That will be the discrete element of gravity, right? The discrete element that causes backward motion. Anti-motion. Whatever you want to call it. Anti-momentum. I mean, it's just so fucking stupid. I'm sorry. And where do they come from? Who admits these gravitons? Where do the gravitons come from? I mean, why? Why are the gravitons collected by matter and somehow they're constantly around a piece of matter or the gravitons to hit you and make you go towards them? The pullitons. They ought to just call them pullitons, right? And then we could all just say, oh, well, that's a stupid idea. Pulliton? Yeah, that's a dumb idea. Let's not go with that. Gravitons aren't proven yet. Duh. It's too silly. Why could you prove something so silly? Good luck. Are assumed to be there in gravity is quantized. If gravity is quantized, I'm just saying. But what? And so you're achieving the idea of turning your bent space into now pushicles. Okay, so now you're saying pushicle causes bent space. All right, so I'm glad that you're migrating to an actual mechanism. So that's good. But the actual mechanism is fundamentally retarded and has no connection to anything we observe in the real universe as being possible. So you might as well just call them invisible manitons, because they're just as made up a theory. They call it a spin 2 particle. Who cares what they call it besides a pushaton or pulliton? It's one of those things I don't understand, and it probably takes a decade of school to really understand. And yes, it might be totally wrong. I don't think there's any might about it. It might be totally contrived bibble-babble that has no connection to any physical evidenced phenomenon. But you are acting like all these PhDs have completely incoherent theories. I'm arguing that it's obvious that the two-slit experiment has always been and is a lie. A big, fat, juicy, smelly lie. That there is no comparison actually between water and light. The light doesn't even work in the one-slit experiment. It can't possibly make two waves constructively and destructively interfering. None of that can be possible. I'm saying the 1/2 mv squared thing is easily dissected as absolute crap. Okay, it's easily understood that yes, gravity is a time-dependent force, and the time-dependent force means that yes, you go 4 times harder, go twice the fast, and then you only have twice the weight. It's so easily proven to be a fact. Why do all of these PhDs miss these easy-to-understand truths? Okay, the fact is they've made insanely stupid mistakes. They've believed in things for stupid and idiotic reasons. They've been fooled by crappy experiments, and then they've sat here and said, I don't need you to redo the Eddington experiment and prove that light is twice as bent. I don't need you to do something better than dropping round things into clay. I don't need you to show me taking 4 times the fuel to go twice as fast. I don't need you to show me a professional bowler using an 8-pound bowling ball. I don't need you to show me a goddamn fucking thing. So why should I call these people anything other than goddamn fucking idiots? Because they don't demand any evidence and they just let their imaginations run wild. What the fuck are they doing that has anything to do with being smart or careful or thoughtful or any of that crap? I'm just saying these are egregious mistakes. When you can't understand 9.8 meters per second, you can't understand that's a time-dependent force, and you think it's a distance-dependent force. Why did they ever... Look, they have a work equation. It says it right in front of your goddamn face. It says work equals force times distance. Even though they know that's 9.8 meters per second. Can't possibly work. With per second forces, you can't possibly think distance is the answer. Time would have to be the right answer. How long was the force applied has to be the right answer. Fuck. I'm just saying, it's obviously you can use your brain as a scheming tool, right? I can have a brain and I can just use it to scheme for my selfish interest. Or I can have some knowledge, and the knowledge protects me against being an asshole, and now I can be aware that it's a multiplayer game and I have to make sure I don't rape any little babies or do anything nasty, and get through my life without causing excessive amounts of harm. So yeah, simple little thing saves me from being an asshole. I'm saying that they don't have the simple principle of physics, which would be the truth first, okay? Evidence is the most important thing, okay? Prove it. Show me. All of those concepts are gone. Not part of their vocabulary, so they're just being phantasmagorical assholes. They're just making up shit as the story they want it to be. They want to imagine some fake destiny for their stupid rotting corpse. They want to, and I think it's kind of obvious that they're just doing what the religious kooks are doing. They're looking like, oh, they're trying to find a way to get out of their mortality. And so they're creating a phantasmagorical fantasy universe where I'll still be alive in the past, and I'll still be alive in the future, and I'll still be all over the place doing things. I mean, some kind of crap like that that's motivating them. They're lost in their Star Wars fantasy. They think there's a warp drive, and they think all this shit is some part of some kind of reality. They're lost in a movie script. God damn. Oh, their evidence is written into papers and books. Go read them. Show me the paper. All right, show me the paper that proves that light is twice as bent by gravity. Fuck you. You haven't proven any of this crap. Show me the paper that proves the antiparticle exists. Show me a fucking paper that does that. Show me a paper that proves the quark exists. Fucking cunt. Typing that shit. It's backed up by reputations of the experts and their school. I just showed you an MIT professor cheating a simple experiment to make free momentum. All right, and you're going to tell me it's backed up by the liars and the bums who are supporting this religion. It's backed up by the Catholic Church. This has the seal of approval of the Pope. Fuck you. All right, that impresses you, then you're a dupe and an idiot. They aren't trying to prove it to people via YouTube videos. They're not trying to prove it to anybody, okay? They gave up on proving it. All they're doing is talking with obnoxious, head up their own asses, fucking egomaniacal bullshit and telling their goddamn fables to people that are too stupid to know they're lying priests. They're just poobahs puking crap and you're fucking listening because you're a Timmy. Timmy! You're too stupid to figure out who's lying to you and who's full of shit. Even though I show them doing it. I show you the videos of these morons who wish to believe in their fantasy-free energy, and they're so desperate that they'll fake experiments, they'll bullshit the argument all to hell. They don't give a fuck about the truth, and you'll sit there and keep telling me that there's redemption in any of these assholes. I mean, I pointed out Veritasium video, millions of views, and he's talking about shooting a single photon, and he commits the biggest error you could possibly commit in doing a single photon experiment. Basically admits it doesn't work when you do it the right way. And you fucking people believe this shit. Most actual PhDs think people like Hakaku make no sense. Oh, why don't you prove that? Go ahead, show me where one of these PhDs writes a single sentence saying Hakaku is full of shit. Can you show me one of their personal letters? Can you show me one? Can you have a recorded phone call? Do you have one single shred of evidence that any of these fucking cunt douchebags ever criticizes any of these cunts? Fuck you in that statement. He makes no sense. Show me. Oh, fuck you. And they would probably agree with you that Lewin has made some mistakes in his video. So this is just, why don't you just make up complete crap? I can't find one honest goddamn motherfucking cunt on the internet who will say that, let alone a physicist. Show me, go find me this person, okay, that will agree with me that Lewin has made some mistakes. Show me this fucking person. Because I can't find one. I see them talking about it on Twitter. Okay, well, that speaks for itself, doesn't it? Somebody with a brain is wasting their time on Twitter. All right. Yeah, people crap on Hakaku. People. Twitterers. Yeah, Twitterers talk on Twitter. Oh, I'm so excited. I can't wait to go find all the brilliant conversations that take place on Twitter. Oh, fuck. Sure, I'll post something about Hakaku. Do I get a sincere public apology? I'm going to block you in a goddamn fucking second. I don't owe you a fucking apology. You said something that's fucking idiotic. Most actual PhD thinks Hakaku makes no sense. Where? Where do you have any evidence for that fucking pile of shit? These people are revered. That's why they're such magical characters. Degrassi, Tyson, all these people, they can make millions of dollars and feed this whole physics bullshit engine, you fucktard. If most PhDs thought they were full of shit, then they wouldn't be the icons of physics. Well, go ahead, find a blog post. All right, go find the physicist with a blog post that actually explains, in some detail why he thinks Mickey Hakaku is full of shit. And not arguing string theory. I mean, obviously, a lot of physicists think string theory is a pile of shit. So, but you're not getting an apology, you fuck. You make bold, unproven assertions about reality. Most actual PhDs think Hakaku it makes no sense. Again, prove that, and then I'll apologize. Oh, what do you mean, practicing physicist? He's got a teaching position in New York University. He's got a very prestigious position, frankly. Feynman didn't spend any time teaching either, right? He did like 4 classes and that was it. Sure, here's a Scott, whatever, blah, blah, blah blog post. Fine, okay, I'll read it later. What a pile of shit this is. That most physicists know the physics is crap they're teaching. I could go through every single PhD who speaks on the internet. Do you think these fuckheads have any humility at all about what they're teaching and what they're saying? I mean, it's just a pile of crap for you to suggest that PhDs are smarter than all these people talking this shit. I just played Wolfram talking a bunch of shit. Absolute fucking shit. Well, I don't want to do this literally. I mean, you think Twitter is some place that a scientist goes to talk about physics. I don't think so myself, personally. Okay, so you're not going to be a very credible scientist, in my opinion, if you're arguing physics on Twitter. You asked for links. Yeah, I mean, links that mean something. I don't know how to make it any clearer to you. I don't find Twitter a credible source. I mean, this guy's mocking YouTube videos and saying YouTube videos aren't credible. I'd say that YouTube videos have about 10 million megatons more mass as a credible thing than a Twitter fucking fart. I'm not doing it now. Fuck you, Tim. I'm demodulating you. Fuck you. You're becoming an obnoxious piece of shit. Telling me what I have to do for you. Particularly because you make some outrageously stupid fucking comment and somehow it's my fucking fault. Fuck you. Not my fucking fault you made an outrageously stupid comment. Most PhDs don't think Akaku is a good physicist. Go ahead, prove it. Honest and sincere about something he can't possibly know is a truth. He knows. He's got the pulse of most PhDs. Until I demodded him, that somehow means he can't make his argument. He's gave me the fucking link. I said I would read the fucking piece of crap. Okay, and we'll see what this other physicist has to say, because I'll be interested. Maybe I'll email the physicist. If he actually thinks Akaku is full of shit, maybe he can figure out that Wolfram is full of shit. Maybe he can figure out that all the other Degrassi's full of shit. Maybe he can actually figure out that this whole wacky bent space theory is full of shit, and this stupid fucking bent time thing is even full of shit. Maybe he can figure out a lot of this shit is shit that I've demonstrated in my videos clearly and decisively. There is no wave function. Light isn't a wave. It doesn't interfere with itself. There is no superposition. There is no fucking entanglement. It's all a pile of shit based on completely insanely exaggerated experimental evidence. Tiny, tiny little grains of sand, and they see a grain of sand over there 10 feet away, and they say Sasquatch. They see a blurry blob in a photograph, and they say UFO. They're doing the same goddamn thing. The physicists are just as loop-de-doo as the dopey Area 54ers. Just as full of shit. Okay, we'll find out who Scott Arson is. God, you people are just God, I just hate this planet. Just scratch you people a little tiny bit. You know, the ones that don't appear to be an asshole are also assholes. You just have to scratch at them a little bit. I mean, if you were a sincere PhD in physics, okay, which is a doctor, I mean, you really did your work. You worked very hard to acquire your knowledge. And you were watching somebody like Degrassi Tyson or Michio Kaku talking absolute shit on TV, telling the public crap that you knew wasn't true. Your instinct is to do absolutely nothing about it. To make no public protest of any kind. And there really is no public accessible public protest of any kind. They don't do anything. There's no evidence they've sent letters to the network saying, stop doing that. Stop making documentaries full of crap. I played a little bit of that Degrassi Tyson fake video on the photons, where he's using the fake, we're watching the photons. And do something different when we're watching. Bullshit. Nobody stops it. All these PhDs don't do a damn thing. So they're smart enough to think it's wrong, but they're not smart enough to know they should do something about it. They can't even make a video like I'm doing. Not a single one of them can make a video like I'm doing. Not a single one. Oh, don't play this philosophy game. We know that physics is completely different than value philosophy. Okay, you're not gonna be. But the bottom line is it's truth seeking. Okay, so that's the bottom line. And how do you do this truth seeking and truth verifying? Well, you do it through observation. You do it through evidence. Yeah, well, wisdom's a tricky word, right? Because that's the hard part. But obviously, that's love of truth. Wisdom would be the truth. It wouldn't be wise to not have the truth. It's not a good plan for getting the right answer is to have the wrong answer. But who cares about, again, this is just so fucking goddamn putridly uninteresting. What verbiage we use to describe natural philosophy. Fuck that shit. The word science is a good word. It should say enough. Science is about a method, a process. And clearly the scientific method has nothing to do with the science they're doing. The theoretical ungrounded speculating is all they're doing. Dark matter, I mean, come on, you can't get more invisible man. I mean, it's such a cop-out. It's such a goddamn evasion of a responsible explanation. It's just leaping to the most irresponsibly cheaty excuse for a fucking made-up theory. What can we possibly make up that is completely unprovable and completely, incapable of being disproven? Invisible Man comes to mind, right? That's the golden ticket. Just invent the invisible man and you can blame anything on him. And that's all they've done. I mean, it's that obvious. I would suggest there's mass in a black hole, but I don't suggest there are black holes. I do believe there are neutron stars. So I do believe there are very dense material objects in the universe, but I don't believe there's any whatever, a black hole, a singularity, whatever, a point particle that weighs a gazillion million pounds. Yeah, I don't believe that exists. Mass has to occupy space. It can't evade occupying space. So all you can do is condense it. Nucleuses are very compact. So the idea of placing a bunch of nucleuses together is not beyond comprehension that would be possible if they were well-arranged helium. But black hole? No. can't create or destroy matter, and it's just still point. I mean, it's just, I don't know why we'd even have the conversation. What's in a black hole? Well, obviously it would have to be mass. Couldn't be a black hole if it didn't have mass in it. We're like ants on a molehill. I think ants would be on an anthill, but whatever. Does the queen know what's on the other side of the earth? Some sort of poetry you're writing now. Bingle, bangle, spangle, bangle, bangle, wangle, tangle, bangle, bangle. Blah, 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 blah. You get me? No, I don't get you. Jesus Christ. We have so much. We have these fantastic telescopes. We have all these instruments. We have all this capacity to, detail, quantify, itemize, function in the universe, and instead they're wasting all the money on the abstract virtual chases of the unicorn dust. I have to argue about stuff that should be already well established. They don't have a single experiment demonstrating 4 times the fuel to go twice as fast. All our technology, and they won't prove something that simple. Alright, guess we're done. So, another unpleasant interaction with the human beings littering the planet, the ones I've had access to anyway. Thank you for depressing me once again. Mission accomplished, fucktards, and such.